Stanford University.
Please join me in warmly welcoming Stanford's 126th commencement speaker, Justice of the California Supreme Court, Mariano-Florentino, Cuéllar.
Thank you, Mr. President, for that kind introduction. Never once did my parents, my wife, or my kids imagine that I would be introduced in a football stadium. Mr. President, University Cellist-in-Chief and Provost Drell, staff who often don't get all the credit they deserve for keeping Stanford running, dynamic faculty colleagues, patient deans, relieved and proud parents who made today possible, and 17. The sun shines on you today. Rightly so. Just a decade and 7 years ago, I was sitting where you are, so I've been in the sun too. I am deeply humbled to share this moment with you. I'm moved to my core by affection to Stanford, and blessed by having taught and learned from some of you graduating today. Here's the last time I felt this humbled at Stanford. At the very edge of campus is a nursery school, Bing Nursery School. My 4-year-old kid was going to school there, and I thought I'd go and observe him a little bit. So I was watching him play, and I started talking to him in Spanish. It's what I do sometimes, hoping he'll pick up some of it. He could tell some of his friends were getting a little confused because I was speaking a different language. So he looked over to his friends and he said, "That's my papi. He speaks that language because he wants me to learn a little Spanish, but also he only speaks a little bit of English." He should have stopped at, "He only knows a little bit," because that's how I feel today. Knowing I would feel this way, I went to my daughter, who's very optimistic and is a teenager, and I wanted to get some comfort from her, and she said something to me which I will loosely translate from the teenager speak that she used, but it was along the lines of, "Look, my hero is Hamilton creator Lin-Manuel Miranda. He gave the Penn commencement address in 2016, and nothing you do is going to come close to what he did. But look, even judges can find little morsels of inspiration. So I thought about sharing a draft of my own hip-hop musical about an unpredictable, privileged New Yorker who makes it to the Oval Office and faces one crisis after another. Would you like to hear a little bit? All right. The main character is, of course, Franklin Roosevelt. I don't know what you were thinking. All right, here we go. Snap your fingers. Check out this lonely, only child of upstate New York. In his mouth, a silver fork with so little need for work. How does he become the famous FDR, steward in a global war and protector of the poor? In their faces, you see the embraces of this man in leg braces. The silver-tongued future father who lost his father got a lot farther by acting a touch nicer, by being a bit wiser, by picking his wife smarter. By 38, he tries out for Veep because he won't wait for fate. All right. So now you've had a chance to see firsthand why I should stick to my knitting, which I'm going to try to do. But to be clear, that bit about picking a spouse smarter than you, it worked for me. I recommend it. Roosevelt was nothing if not a deal maker, so I'm going to make a deal with you. If you keep at bay that little supercomputer in your pocket for just a few more minutes, I'm just going to take 12 more minutes, and then I'm going to sit down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share 3 reflections, and then I'm going to ask you to remember one thing. It's about what makes it to the very core of your awareness and what's left at the edge. Then you're going to be on your way. My first reflection is about context, your good fortune, and mine. Think of the world as it stood when Franklin Delano Roosevelt was a baby. Back then, nearly 40% of children around the world died before age 5. Think about that just for a moment. Today, only 4% of children die before age 5. As my grandfather was teaching himself to read in rural Mexico a century ago, global literacy was 12%. Now it's 85% of the world's population that can read. In her northern Mexican kitchen, my grandmother worked miracles with corn, cilantro, tomato, serrano peppers, and sadly, lard. Her own grandparents could scarcely imagine the bounty of nutrition at her fingertips. That so much food is grown by so few people is a miracle. It's what makes it possible for us to study artificial intelligence and art history. We make so much water clean enough to drink that we literally shower in it. As we celebrate your graduation, we have the means to enjoy lives that are not only more fulfilling, but twice as long on average as when my grandfather was born. You are the heirs to this gift of progress across time, for some of us across borders. It is a testament to creativity, to science, yes, to engineers, but also to those social scientists sitting over there, to how we understand how society changes, what it takes to get someone to wash his hands or her hands in the merest instant of time in history. My father's father began life as a shepherd in rural Mexico and had no formal education. Leaving his parents at age 12, he struggled to make it to the border city where I'd eventually come into the world. Later, he worked to create a municipal waterworks that brought the city clean water. He faced not only engineering problems, but the complacency, the corruption that to this day can frustrate even the most idealistic efforts to improve health. Yet he succeeded in the end, and clean water helped strengthen the city's health literally and figuratively. The water in the river dividing Mexico and the United States, where I was born, also told a story. How people experience different lives, different levels of well-being across borders, even as trade and migration has made our world smaller. As a kid, I used to look across that river. I used to look at the other side, at a place that looked cleaner and richer, because it was. Per capita GDP in America back then was 4 times greater than what it was in Mexico, like Egypt sharing a land border with the United Kingdom. Trucks rumbled north, crossing that border piled high with okra. I pondered how fate sorted the babies to one side of that border or the other. Years later, my family followed those trucks to this country in search of a better life. Then, as now, I was drawn to this complicated and beautiful country by its commitments, however imperfectly realized, to finding a place for immigrants like my brother and me, and like my mother-in-law who escaped North Korea as a child, to public schools like the ones that prepared so many of you and me for college, to the higher ideals that JFK evoked in his inaugural address when he spoke of a place where the strong are just, the weak secure, the peace preserved. These ideals are not easy to realize, nor can we erase the concerns of people whose lives are at the very edge of subsistence even now. Angus Deaton reminds us 1 billion people still have the short lifespans, the bleak living standards their forebears endured. I would add examples from our own body politic. Somewhere in America this morning, a man who still hungers for work decides to give his plasma for money to support his family. To leave hidden his life also risks neglecting another life, that of his little girl, who's never had someone tell her that she could grow up to attend Stanford too. There is no point and some peril in facing the challenges our world has in store for us, divided, deprived of the wisdom and talent, waiting to be tapped. May knowledge, your knowledge, bring light to these divisions. Which brings me to the second reflection about what it takes to expand knowledge, to bridge divides. Some of my most moving moments happened right here. Yours too, falling in and out of love, discovering the subtle melody as I once did, connecting psychology and economics, learning to speak up and forge coalitions, how to dialogue over what's true and what's not, instead of just fighting over what you believe. It's the people at the edge of your awareness that suddenly become your close friends, even though you join a Black Lives Matter protest and she's the daughter of a cop and thinks you have policing all wrong. You've conveyed your high expectations of this place, and rightly so, and it's tried to work, however imperfectly, its quiet miracles. The last decade and 7 years have also made me understand something else. Our knowledge and values are forged to a considerable extent, not by the days that go the way we expect, but that the ones who turn the way we don't expect. Maybe you experienced something like a bus ride I took once when I was a graduate student. I'd been volunteering in San Jose, and one evening I missed the Caltrain. The ride on the 22 bus late that night was not short. Two riders were kvetching about the pains of re-entering society after being in prison. Their words would echo in my mind years later when I worked at the White House. After an hour, a fight nearly broke out between two of the passengers. Both of them were drunk. The driver calmly parked the bus, announced on the PA that we'd stay parked until the two gentlemen keen to fight got off the bus or calmed down. As the passengers groaned, the belligerents eyed each other like Burr and Hamilton. "I am not throwing away my bus ride," said one, as I recall. The other retreated and scowled. The bus rumbled on, and I pondered how much else the driver could add to what I was learning in graduate school and law school about resolving disputes. What these moments evoke is the difficulty of bridging divides between people who disagree or even want to fight, between ideas difficult to reconcile, or simply between ourselves and those we encounter, as some I have encountered over the years with starkly different lives. Like the undocumented man with an American family sitting behind me on a Greyhound bus once, telling his life story to the man next to him, not realizing that man is an immigration agent who's going to detain him a few hours later in Brawley, California. The child of farm workers from the border who grows up to work on the Border Patrol and feels pride in her work. The man who no doubt loves his country just as much as I do, and for the life of him doesn't get why I'm so determined to make sure language is never a barrier to a domestic violence survivor who needs protection from our courts. The opportunity to see these divides, to bridge them, now passes to you, 017. Take from your experience here what you need. Keep at it, because we rarely persuade people we don't understand. And keep playing your part in our shared effort to separate fact from fiction. Remember how much this endeavor pivots on guardians of integrity, like this university, guardians that depend on people who, as Learned Hand put it, do not carry a sword under a scholar's gown. My third reflection is about the value and varieties of public service. Architects sometimes say that the best architecture makes us forget how hard it works. So it is with the architecture of our civic life. In democracy, no leader is as important as the civic architecture he or she swears to protect and support. Aside from being a husband and a father and an American, being in public service has been the greatest privilege I've had. For any of us, these opportunities can take many forms. Strengthening one of these guardians of integrity in the media or in education, helping translate a scientist's findings into plans for keeping safe our food and water, growing a nonprofit that will enable that whip-smart little girl living in poverty to apply her talents that might not otherwise be discovered. The reward isn't fame, it's not personal gain, but it's a singular privilege to see how our civic architecture works, where it doesn't, how we protect and adapt it, using what we learn, our own hands, and an eye to nuance. You might do that by engaging with democracy, volunteering for a campaign that inspires you, as I once did. You might have to brace yourself, as I once did, to face the mix of hope and hostility from residents in a foreclosure-laden neighborhood. I was at a caucus in Nevada, watching an election take place, observing for the campaign I was supporting. At the very edge of my awareness, distracted by a smartphone, I saw how the caucus chair made a small rounding error, one I almost missed. Because I corrected the chair's mistake, a mistake that worked in my candidate's favor, the campaign I supported lost a delegate. What we gained protecting the process was worth far more. Please seek out these opportunities to share your good fortune. Listen for clues about how to reconcile our aspirations and our always messier realities. The choices we make in our civic lives don't always come pre-wrapped in bundles marked important, addressed to a judge or an FBI director. They come to the civil servant asked by her boss to ignore the rules, to the voter whose frustration begins degenerating into rancid cynicism. Time and again in public service, you're handed reminders of how institutions depend on acts or omissions. My grandfather died when I was 8. His dark brown eyes would be wide with wonder if he could take in our age of miracles. He'd soon guess what you know, that more change is coming, about how we deliver justice to everyone in any language, how we reconcile freedoms of those who can prosper in any country with the needs of those stuck, struggling in their own country, how we build convolutional neural networks, not only for getting us to buy something, but helping us be resolute not to, how we face loss of dignity from lost work, how we confront climate change, how our technology can feed the world without feeding machines too much power over our lives. Today, and I'm getting to the end, I've sought to remind you of your own power by talking of the edge and the core. Yours, and only yours, is the power to embrace what's at the very edge of your awareness, the families getting left at the periphery in the larger story of human progress, what we learn outside formal channels of education, the emotions subtly driving us to anger, the unsettled feeling that we're not quite ready, if indeed we ever will be, to lethally arm that sleek, fully automated drone, the profound ways our institutions depend on acts or omissions, the molecule or data point stubbornly refusing to behave as predicted. Always, it's within your power to move these concerns closer in to your heartland of awareness. Take what's at the edge of your awareness seriously, and it becomes your own edge, your advantage, your power to see the danger others face and in their fate, yours. Your ability to see the little miracles playing out in a Fresno poetry slam and not just a Silicon Valley coding camp. Your means to engage the world and each other as I have seen you do. And now it is your turn, 017, heirs to the gift of more life, more health, and more wealth. So I share this last request. Keep close to you a letter. I don't care if you use a fountain pen or dictate it to your smartphone. You can write it tonight. You can address it to your future self. You can read it in 10 months or 10 years. Use that letter to list the values at your core. What you did here that fed your soul, quenched your thirst for understanding. What's been at the edge of your awareness that you'll place in that letter so it's nearer to your core. How you might bridge your own dreams and those of a family with its own heartbreakingly simple goal. Stay nourished, stay safe. It was no accident that FDR spoke of freedom from fear or hunger. Whatever his limitations, the former lonely only child sought a world where people could dream because they could feel safe and nourished enough to do so. That today you are living that dream is the very core of our celebration. Tomorrow, I'm betting on you, 017. Share that gift. Keep sharp your peripheral vision and celebrate these ideals in any language as the days turn into decades. Thank you, and God bless you.
For more, please visit us at stanford.edu.